All right. Whiskey Through Food, another episode back at it. What's going on, Lee? Thank you for being the first to tune on in. Today, we're going to be talking about an absolutely fantastic cocktail. Sam, what's up? What's up? Good to see you. My man, Sam Green, one of my favorite whiskey personalities. This whiskey fabric is really awesome. If you're not a part of the whiskey community here in the United States, that actually stretches much farther abound. We have a great relationship with a lot of whiskey enthusiasts and fans up in Canada as well. But the whiskey fabric around the world is incredibly tight, very tight knit. We love raising a glass with each other. And Sam, you are one of my absolute favorite people to talk whiskey about. We got to get on another episode of a podcast here coming up pretty soon, right? All right, enough dilly dallying, enough pitter pattering around. Let's dive on into it today. A little bit of food and whiskey pairing, of course, because this is whiskey through food. So what are we doing if we're not tasting drams and pairing them to delicious little bites, little tiny bites that I'm preparing in my kitchen here? As many of you know, I'm not the greatest or most talented chef. Who'd have thought the guy that talks about whiskey might not be the best chef? But I do love to eat, right? You can tell that by my profile when I stand sideways. I'm slightly bigger than I was when I was in college. Can you believe I used to be able to fly? I used to be able to dunk with two hands. I was a hell of a basketball player. But now I'm a hell of a whiskey ambassador. So that means that I get to travel the world and talk about some of the most delicious whiskeys on behalf of Ardbeg and Glenmorangie. Even though I go by the name of Ardbeg Cam because of my affiliation with the wonderful and revered iconic brand of Ardbeg, today we're going to actually be speaking about Glenmorangie, our sister distillery. So Glenmorangie was one of my first whiskeys that I ever really kind of started exploring. Similar to many of you who are going to watch this video, similar to many of you who are tuned on right now, I thought of Glenmorangie and all the whiskeys from kind of that northern Highland area as just another Glen. I didn't know that incredibly nuanced and incredibly delicate whiskeys could be produced in that region, and that region alone would have a variance of styles, right? You've got Glenmorangie, which makes just an absolutely fantastic floral, almost white fruit kind of laden style of distillate in whiskey that's showcased by Glenmorangie Original. You have another one of my favorite distilleries, tiny bit farther north, but Old Pulteney makes an incredibly saline rich and almost ethereal style of spirit as well up there. You've got our good friends over at Mortlock. Sam, I saw a post that you had posted on I can't remember what page it was, but talking about the style of whiskey that we love from the Mortlock distillery being dense and rich and fatty, almost like liquid bone marrow or so. Delicious style of whiskey. But so what that teaches us is that the Highlands and Speysides, Lowland and Campbelltown, they're really only there for regional reference. Distilleries aren't necessarily handcuffed to creating one style of whiskey or one style of distillate based on the regionality or where they're from. Another great representation of this is actually taking a look at Islay. Our good friends over at Bruichladdich, Bruichladdich, the classic laddie, making a lightly or almost unpeated whiskey, as opposed to some of the other whiskeys on the island. Look at Lagavulin and Laphroaig, Bowmore, and of course the one and only Ardbeg, right? So while I do normally wear the hat of heavily peated preacher, today we're going to be taking that off. I guess not taking it off, but turning it backwards so you can hear me talk and wax poetically about one of my favorite whiskeys, Glenmorangie's Quinta Ruban, right? Just absolutely fantastic whiskey. I'll go ahead and hold it up right here. There we go. Shout out Sony for that autofocus right there. So Quinta Ruban might be a little bit of a new packaging for some of you, especially for some of my bartender friends. You'll notice that we've gone away from the iconic black packaging that the old bottlings used to have, and we've updated it with a slightly more modern kind of almost mint green, or like a deepened mint green, almost like in between a mint and forest green. And then also the packaging isn't the only thing that is slightly changed. There's also an age statement. There's always been an age statement on this whiskey, but the age statement has gone up. It's gone up from being a 12-year to now being a 14-year with no price increase, and that's absolutely fantastic. Older doesn't necessarily mean better. But I do think it's important to at least discuss what age statements mean to single malt Scotch whiskies. As you may have covered with me last week when we were talking about Ardbeg Anno and Ardbeg Wee Beastie. Ardbeg Wee Beastie is a 5-year-old whiskey because it has 5 directly, proudly presented on the outside of the bottle, right? Whereas you take another look at a whiskey like Ardbeg Anno, which is, as we say in the industry, a non-age statement whiskey, right? So we don't have to legally disclose the age of the said distillates that are being, or the said whiskeys that are being used to comprise or compile that whiskey. Whereas a whiskey like Glenmorangie Quinta Ruban, remember, we're now back to being an age statemented whiskey. So 14 years is going to be the youngest whiskey that is in this bottle, right? Glenmorangie also happens to be part, or Glenmorangie Quinta Ruban happens to be part of what we call the EMR range, or extended maturation range for Glenmorangie. What that means is that these whiskeys have graced, they have graced American oak, ex-bourbon casks. They're allowed to age for at least 10 years. In the case of Quinta Ruban right now, it's slightly over 11, almost to 12 years, then to be finished off in the secondary cask, which is actually a ruby port cask, right? So these absolutely fantastic port pipes are going to be what give us a lot of this coloration. When we pour this whiskey, you'll notice that there's a beautiful kind of almost grapefruit ruby red hint, almost like a this underlaying current that rides underneath the whiskey. Beautiful coloration. One of my favorite whiskeys to pour and just stare at in its glass. I lied. That's one of my favorite whiskeys to just drink, but it is absolutely beautiful going into the glass. So let's go ahead and put some of this whiskey into said glass so that then I can put it into my face. It's Monday. I'm in a damn good mood. I'll hold this out again as well for you. Glenmorangie Quinta Ruban, 14-year-old, absolutely fantastic whiskey. Came open without a hitch. When I was doing a tasting earlier this weekend, I actually broke the cork of a very old bottle of Ardbeg off. So I'm very happy that this Glenmorangie did not struggle for me at all, right? All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at the color. Regard the color, lightly moving it back and forth in its glass. Remember, this is single malt Scotch whiskey. This isn't wine. We don't need to swirl it around in our glasses. Anytime we're doing that, what we're actually doing is we're causing some of the more volatile esters and some of the more volatile aromatics to immediately vacate that glass, right? So when we move it around just ever so slightly, we encourage those things to stay in solution, stay in our glass until we're ready to now start going through olfactory analysis, right? That's just a fancy way of saying we stick our goddamn noses into it, right? All right, so let's dive into it. All right, on the nose, immediately some beautiful winter spices. That's absolutely fantastic. What up, Popco? There we go. There we go. Mike talking about my food, right? Yeah. All right, here we go. So diving on into it, beautiful, beautiful winter spices, a little bit of rich fruit coming off of it as well. That port providing beautiful structure to the whiskey. Great, great amount of oxidation kind of happening. Some almonds, walnuts, beautiful stone fruit as well. And again, those classic spices, cinnamon, clove, all those baking spices that we come to appreciate and expect in whiskey, especially in whiskeys that are finished off in secondary casks, but start their maturation journey in ex-bourbon casks. Ex-bourbon just gives you such a wonderful place to kind of benchmark and start a whiskey from, right? Looking at Glenmorangie whiskeys, we always know that there's going to be some floral characteristics. There's also going to be some almost fruity characteristics and citrus. Remember, that's a huge part of the Glenmorangie house style. Here, I see it a little bit more as like almost Seville oranges. It's kind of rounded that corner from being like that sharp orange that we see in the original to now a soft, just slightly softened, maybe a little bit sweeter. Something I like to do when I'm tasting whiskey that I encourage all of you to do at home as well. Whenever you're trying a whiskey, give it a quick blow into the glass before you actually take your first sip. What that's going to do is it's going to encourage a lot of those volatile esters that have now been sitting around. Let's get those out of the glass. It was fun to engage with them at first. Let's get them out of the glass so now we can get to the heart of the whiskey. All right, let's do some tasting. That is absolutely delicious. There's almost like a mulled wine aspect to it, where it's fruity up front, then starts to get kind of a little bit narrower in terms of the structure. Tannins start to roll in. Beautiful spice on the back end. And you still get all of that beautiful, almost like raw ingredient. Very much like it's cereal heavy on the finish. Just a very delicious style of whiskey. All right, so let's talk food pairing. Today, I paired some absolutely tasty, delicious little snacks. I don't know if we can flip this here. I'll hold this up, even though it's the empty box. Come on, Sony. Come on, Sony. All right, anyway. Well, these are Anna's ginger Swedish thins, right? I really loved these because of the cinnamon aspect. The cinnamon, the ginger, that spiciness that I really love in a lot of whiskeys is absolutely going to be carried forward by these exact same little crackers that we have, these Swedish thins. Then what I did is I actually layered on a little bit of cranberry, this cranberry preserve. I love the fruity aspects of Glenmorangie Quinta Ruban, so it was just kind of a no-brainer for me when I was thinking about flavors that would potentially pair, right? I was like, red fruit, cranberry is something that has a little bit of acid, has a little bit of like almost a zing to it as well, and will pair really, really well with ginger. We're going into my favorite time of the year, the holiday season. So things like ginger, things like clove, all of these warming spices, these are the things that we're pulling for now. So let's remember that when we're making cocktails around our houses as well. On top of that, I have added a couple of goji berries. And then I also dusted, let's say salt bay, a salt bayed with just a little bit of ground nutmeg. So those are all going to be elements that we're going to pull out in the cocktail as well. But for now, let's go ahead and see how the hell we did with our food pairing. Let's go ahead and try it first. I'll hold one of them up for the camera here. There we are. Oh, dropped a goji berry, but that's all right. All right, let's see how we did on the food pairing. The snap of a crisp, the ginger. There's that beautiful, beautiful clove, like almost clove, ground cinnamon aspect to it as well. The citrus of the goji berries and the cranberry. That's absolutely delicious. That's like a snack that I would probably have when I'm eating, like when I'm eating in front of the TV, watching movies, probably drinking whiskey as well at the same time. Let's see how we did with the pairing. That's absolutely fantastic. Love that food pairing. Absolutely delicious whiskey. You can get the weight that this whiskey is bottled at as well. That's absolutely fantastic. You know what it is. It's time to move into a cocktail now. Let's talk cocktails. How are we going to make a delicious cocktail that pulls at these themes? We need something that's going to be a little bit spicy, have some of that clove, some of that cinnamon that we're really looking to harness around this time of year. Some people just pull for straight pumpkin spice. Get out of here. I mean, pumpkin spice is delicious. Of course, pumpkin spice is delicious, but that's like saying, like, you know, I mean, everybody loves chocolate. How could you not love chocolate unless you're allergic to it? But yeah, anyway, it's just one of those universally accepted truths that pumpkin spice is also delicious. But one of the things I really love about pumpkin spice, one of the elements I most love, is actually ground nutmeg. So we're going to be focusing the cocktail around this ingredient, this singular ingredient, ground nutmeg. We're going to do that by utilizing Quinta Ruban in about 1.5 ounces pour. This is going to add a little bit of not only act as our base, but it's a bold enough kind of spice that's coming from some of the oak that's actually being used for Quinta Ruban to give us structure for the cocktail that we're really going to love. Then we're going to add a little bit of cranberry. We're going to add a little bit of this oat milk that I've actually added a little bit of vanilla extract and also ground nutmeg too as well. We've kind of made this like almost like a Thai tea base nut milk. I don't really know what to exactly call it, but it's an ingredient that I made up on the fly here at home. Whiskey through food. Let's do it. All right, let's make this cocktail. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and grab my jigger. We'll start with 1.5 ounces of Glenmorangie Quinta Ruban. Perfect. Now we're going to go ahead and pull for about 1 ounce of cranberry. 1 ounce of cranberry here. This will add a little bit of acidity, but it'll also give us some of those juicy, fruity notes that we were really hoping for. And now we're going to add a 1/2 ounce of lime. Again, just adding a little bit more acidity to the cocktail. Cocktails are all about balance, baby. You need a little bit of acidity. You need something strong. You need something sweet. And you're also going to need some water. All right. So now we're also going to add a little bit of this oat milk here. The oat milk that we're working with today has been adjusted. We're going to add 1 ounce of this oat milk, but I added a little bit of vanilla and a little bit of ground nutmeg to it. What up, Lauren Walensky? Good to see you, sweet thing. That's my girl, my sister. What up? I hope you're having a fantastic Monday. You were so great on your presentation this morning. Shout out to you. All right, stay put. Watch me make this cocktail. All right, so we've got our Glenmorangie Quinta Ruban. We've got a little bit of cranberry. We've used a little bit of our oat milk. Now I'm going to add a little bit of sweetness to the cocktail. I'm going to add about a 1/2 ounce of this delicious port from 1989, my birth year. Shout out. Just going to use that to add a little bit of texture, a little bit of sweetness to the cocktail. And now, last but not least, we're just going to add 1 egg white. This is going to be a fizz style cocktail. All right. Just shake it there. All right. Now let's grab that ice from off screen here. All right, and we're back. All right, so we've shaken the cocktail there. We've got some ice. This is already looking and smelling absolutely delicious. Let's go ahead and add a few pieces of ice to our cocktail. Now we're going to shake it. This time for dilution. First time was just to froth and whip everything into shape. And there we are. Forgive the noise, y'all. Forgive the noise. There's something so rhythmic to shaking. I love it. It's like you're dancing. There we go. Got to make it look good. Feel good. Perfection. Shake it till it's almost too cold to hold. There we go. Shaker tin wanted to fight me there. Let's go ahead and see how it was. Ooh, that's delicious. A little bit more left in the top. Boom. All right. Now we're just going to take our strainer. Remember, we're bartenders. We're not monsters. We fine strain our cocktails around here, y'all. There we are. This is a fizz style cocktail. So we've got a little bit of an egg white, which is going to give us some of that texture. My fellow bartenders are like, yeah, no shit, Cam. Perfection. There we go. All right. All right. Now, all we're going to do is we're just going to tamp this down just a couple of times. Russell, I'm glad you liked my shake. It was provocative. That was for you, though, sir. That was for you. All right. Just going to add a couple of pieces of ice. Again, we've already added the dilution. Now I'm just kind of trying to lift the overall volume of the cocktail just a little bit. And then my favorite ingredient. I've been saving this ingredient for weeks for you folks. You're in for a treat here. If you have never had Bundaberg root beer, you need to go buy as much as you can right now, immediately. It's an Australian root beer. They make a delicious ginger beer as well. Just one of my absolute favorites. We're going to go ahead and just going to immediately make it look good. We're going to pour it down the straw. And we're just trying to sink some of this into the actual body of the cocktail because I don't want to stir it too much because we've achieved the texture that we already want. We just need to now make everything kind of go into solution, Perfection. Immediately like that. And then again, a great cocktail isn't complete until you garnish it. The cocktail was based around this ingredient, ground nutmeg, so it's only right that that be the final ingredient on top of the cocktail. So you have now a beautiful cocktail in seasonally appropriate glassware. I might add as well. These fall leaves right here. The cocktail is Glenmorangie, Quinto Ruban, about 1.5 ounces, 1 ounce of cranberry, 1 ounce of nut milk or oat milk, which has actually been kind of tampered with a little bit. We added a little bit of vanilla and a little bit of ground cinnamon and nutmeg directly to it. About 1/2 ounce of port, 1 egg white, and 1/4 ounce of lime juice, shaken, topped off with some ginger beer. This is what Whiskey Through Food is all about. Diversifying how we consume cocktails, how we consume whiskey, and how we pair those things to food at home as well. So this is a hell of a drink. This was a hell of a snack. And you know that Glenmorangie is one hell of a whiskey. Let's see how we did on the pairing and see how these things all go together. All right, let's go ahead and taste it. Oh, absolutely delicious. It's the soft, silky texture because of the oat milk that we utilized. That ground nutmeg jumping off the top in terms of aromatics, really hitting us right in the olfactory bulb immediately. Just a delicious, delicious aroma. Beautiful cocktail presentation. The coloration is great, again, because of that cranberry. The coloration to me reminds me of what it looks like for me when it's kind of a cocktail representation of Quinto Ruban in its glass. This ruby, almost grapefruit looking kind of pink hue that hides underneath the general tone of the cocktail and hides underneath the actual tone of the whiskey as well. Again, we're going to pull out, some red fruit. The red fruit is going to be cranberry in the cocktail because, of course, we use a little bit of cranberry. In the whiskey, you're going to have the acidity of cranberry. You're also going to have a little bit of that like almost blackberry that leads into those mulled spices. We paired all of this to a delicious little pairing, which was a ginger snap cookie that had a little bit of cranberry preserve, goji berry, and a little bit of ground cinnamon and nutmeg on top. Let's see how the food pairing and the cocktail go. It's the only bad thing about having long hair. It gets in your drink sometimes. Food pairing to the cocktail. These two things are shockingly similar. This is what Whiskey Through Food is about. I hope you catch me at a later date. Next episode is on Friday. I hope you have a hell of a week. As always, I'm Cameron George, National Ambassador to Ardbeg, heavily peated preacher, and your best friend. Cheers, Slan Javal. Have a great week. I'll see you on Friday.